this computer. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the January 2023 Becker Patreon session. I appreciate your support. Hi, Chuck, Wade, and Phil. So let's jump right in. We had some planned elements to show and share with people. One of the patrons had asked last week on how do we do meeting management in Tinderbox, basically how do you set up your meetings and all that in traditional Becker fashion. I didn't just give him the little centimeter, I gave him the mile. So I built the whole demo file on how to do that so we can review that. Then the other thing I've been working on over the last week or two is I built integration of Tinderbox with Clockify. So I now can demonstrate how you can essentially manage your time in Tinderbox and then submit it to an enterprise-grade time management system. So if you're working with your consultant and you're working with clients and you want to do all your within Tinderbox, but then be able to share your time management reports with clients or do enterprise time management reporting, you can do that. So I kind of wanted to demonstrate that this morning. Then a couple of other things I've been working on is I got my doctorate committee and the school approved the internal review board approved my doctoral research about 2 weeks ago. So I've started the data collection and I've finished 16 of 20 interviews that I'll be doing. And so I've been basically going through and managing the interview process in Tinderbox, and then I will be starting qualitative data analysis of the interviews in Tinderbox this weekend. So that's one of the projects I'm doing. Thank you, Lou, for that. It's been 18 years in the works, so pretty excited to hopefully be doctor by April is the goal, May at the latest. And then so that's one thing I've been doing, and then the other thing is I think some of you may know I started teaching at Cal Poly last term, and so I'm now teaching my class for the second round, and really refined the process of managing the lectures, taking real-time teaching notes while doing the class, and then configuring a follow-up on that. So, post-class, doing a quick little announcement to the students. Here's what we covered. Here's the video from the session. Here's the PowerPoint. Here's the new terms that I've defined that we brought up during class that you didn't understand. Here's a feature of the guest speaker we're having next week. So just kind of getting all of that coordinated within the class. So been super, super busy. And those are the kinds of topics that I've got to cover. So we certainly can dig into those. But before we do that, I'd love to hear what you guys are working on. What do you got?
I got a quick bid. It might be parts of what it's actually, as always, as often, it's parts of what you've already just described. But this is just, we don't have to talk about this. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm doing a statewide organizing project where I am gathering information on basically dozens, if not hopefully more, but dozens of organizations. Each of them has various people attached to them which I need to keep associated with the organizational file / note. I have meeting notes, like short meeting notes, hey, let's have a phone call kind of thing. And then longer qualitative interview type notes when I'm, trying to capture, deeper data about what they're doing. And I have a file. It's actually, set up. It's kind of it's a mess. It's not a mess, but it's full of redundancies and inefficiencies, basically. Some of them are silly things, like I end up typing their name 3 times, which is, full name, first name, last name. That's silly stuff that we don't necessarily have to waste our time on here. But more, my question would be the kind of best way to organize that kind of tripartite element, people, organizations, and then data or notes on various conversations. And then the third thing, fourth thing rather, this is something you and I talked about a long time ago or a while ago, Michael. I would love, I don't know if this is the interest of anybody else, and if it's not, we can can it for this session or any session, but what I want to do eventually is to be able to export a simple network matrix, basically what's called an N by M matrix, of all the people and all the organizations and who works with who, who's connected to who, which I can then output to a simple kind of network analytical program.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm genuinely open to, if other folks, this is something I'm doing and the file's ongoing, so it's messy, but it exists. So if other people have more pressing or interesting to group questions, I'm happy to defer.
Yeah, the network analytical program is going to be a little harder because I just think, well, it's absolutely doable. Like the issue is like anything. Yeah, and Tom and I were talking, just pouring my coffee here. Tom and I were talking about this last week.
The good
One of
looking
the things
coffee
that,
pot.
yeah, thanks. One of the things that you do in this process is you want to think about what are my inputs and what are my outputs and what am I trying to accomplish? And invariably, what and I think Tom actually noted this. I'm so zealotly focused on that. That's what's really led me to my success with Tinderbox. Is and in my outputs, I have increasingly stratification of those outputs. I have the grand view of self-enlightenment as an output. And then the other question is like, what are some of the, but then that even gets super granular of, okay, to achieve self-enlightenment in this context, AKA to produce this report to get my client to work with my client to get paid, I need to build a table of this information, which is going to feed into this, which will lead to that, which will lead to that. And that's a really iterative process. But I think that kind of zealot focus of, even if it's task-based or some grand dream, it's I've got these inputs, I want this output. What do I need to do in the middle to make that happen? And that's again one of the glorious things of Tinderbox. So on that last point you brought up, building the N by N matrix, maybe I want to assign some homework to you when we can come back and work on that, either one-on-one together or in next month's session, because just so you know, that same kind of network request is coming out of the Tinderbox forum as well. What network analytical program would you like to work with? So with that in mind, so we've got this network analytical program. What inputs does that program need? And so if we understand that program's inputs, we can construct the output out of Tinderbox to give it that. And so that's where we need to start.
I can answer that quickly and easily for now. Basically, almost every network analytical program accepts some form of spreadsheet, Excel or whatever. And so really, an MIM matrix is honestly, it's as simple as here's a column on the left of all the names in it, every person. This is a somewhat simplified version, but the principle's there. Every name, like person A is head of the blah blah organization, person B, person C, and then all the organizations across the top, including, of course, their organizations. So organization A, organization B, organization C are all columns. And then for each person and organization where there's a co-occurrence in a note. I mean, although some of this stuff, this gets into the nitty gritty of how you signify this within Tinderbox, but let's set that aside for a moment. For every person who's a member of an organization, you put a 1.
Yeah.
And for everyone who's not, you put a 0. And it's really the guts of it are that simple.
Well, so I mean, that's super easy to do. So basically, you're saying like name, Becker, Norris,
Becker. Yep. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, and then we'll say company A. If I could spell properly. Jesus. company A,
You may
company
not get your
B,
PhD unless you get your
company
spelling.
C. Well, that's why we have Grammarly. I am a big fan of the tools that help me do the job. So you do something like this.
Yes, sir. That's right. It's really that simple.
Okay, that's really easy. So we can certainly bang that out. But again, I have a hard stop at 7 o'clock today, so we certainly can do that.
I'm not saying we should do this today.
Yeah. But Lou, we can certainly
I'm
do this.
sincere that.
I'll pull together a template
Yeah.
for you in 10 minutes and send it to you. I mean, it's
Okay.
literally a 10-minute exercise. We just don't want to have we just don't have the 10 minutes today.
Okay.
And then as for organizing people and names and such like that, let me go up and I'll do that. And while I'm kind of playing with Lou's project real quick before we dig into the other stuff, anybody else have any other comments, thoughts, questions, concerns, issues? What's on your mind?
I have somewhat similar, but slightly different. I'm looking at
Okay.
relationships of founders and supporters and financiers of companies in the mid 19th century, and who knew who and how, were they connected? Did they know from family ties? Not just that, because there's a lot of similarity in who invested in what companies and then what role they played, particularly in Northeast industrial manufacturing.
So say that again. So basically mapping of personal relationships.
Well, personal and business relationships, because I'm beginning to dig down into who was involved in founding various companies, like the Boston Manufacturing Company or other things. And then you see, this person was the main founder, but these people supported him. But they're all part of this network of essentially wealthy people in the Boston area.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, well, what other connections did they use to find and found other companies?
So it's basically this, and again, that's so funny because at the end of the day, what I'm learning as we get deeper into this knowledge management thing is, in some respects, it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's basically I've got a concept. That concept's related to some other concept that may be related to some other concept, and what that concept is, whether or not it's person, people, food, animal, doesn't really matter. I mean, it's the mechanics at the end start becoming kind of the same. So with that in mind, but that in that regard, that is similar to Lou's question and Lou's group. Right. So if we're starting out with a basic Tinderbox file, what I've learned is, or what and maybe call it the Tinderbox way, or however you want to do it. What I've started to come to realize a bit is trying to break myself away from the artificial hierarchical structure that we're so used to when it comes to folder management and all of that. So when I first started doing this kind of idea, and I'm going to pop into outline view easier because this helps deal with the problem. So when I first did it, I was trying to do like or we'll call it entity. And then I said, people are related to entities. So when I first started doing the process, I'd say, okay, you've got a company and that person's related to a company. And then after a while, I said, no, wait a minute. What happens is you have people and those, and maybe those people are related to companies. Right. But when you do that, the challenge is just what we're kind of talking about is this multiplicity relationship that, some people may have multiple relationships with, relationship with multiple companies. Some companies may have multiple relationships with people, and artificially, doing this hierarchical structure, I ended up finding to be really, really limiting, because I'd want that person to be related to multiple companies, or I'd want that company to be related to multiple people. So my solution around that.
I just say that's exactly the mess that mine is right now.
Yeah, and I've been struggling that for a couple of years. So here's my solution that I've come up with, and you've now seen this invariably with various work meetups. I've come up with this idea. I call it the resources folder. Okay, and what the resources folder gives you is essentially this generalized concept of, here are notes that I want to be able to reproduce across multiple projects. So here are my projects. And we'll call this like maybe Article 1, report to Research 3. Right. And so within this kind of projects folder or whatever you want to call it, master container, this is my work. And maybe that's the other way we'll just call it. We'll call this the work folder. Right. And so in the work folder, I'm writing articles, I'm writing a report, I'm doing some kind of research. And invariably these atomic ideas. So another, if you want to use the zettlekasten concept, atomic idea. Right. These atomic core ideas are what will be consistently happening. You'll find these linking across all of these different initiatives. And so even if you were just, in the case of Lou or Tom, you've got one specific project in this Tinderbox file. But even within that, you've got, within that note, you've got note 1, note 2, note 3. And this is the hard part without having like synthetic data of a real project, is sometimes it's hard to abstract this. So I've got note 1 and I want note 1 related to that person, but I've also got note 3 and I want note 3 related to that person. And so that's where I started to realize, okay, wait a minute, the concept of an atomic idea. This is my work. And in the resources folder, I'm going to have things like people folder. I'm going to have things like entity folder. And the reason why I call it entity as opposed to organization or as opposed to company. And again, this is just how my brain works. Well, what is an organization? Well, an organization could be an enterprise. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a government. It could be a project team, and so I found the term entity to be the most generic that could then span any of these other types of labels that we might refer to a group of people or a collection of things doing something. So that's why I landed on the term entity, and I went back and forth between enterprise and government and organization. So I just loosely called it entity. For me, I also have my common, atomic asset elements or terms folder, themes folder, categories folder. Right. And in my, there's like regulations, standards, right? So it's going to end up being whatever your kind of atomic assets are. But the idea for me was this, this structure would lend itself to be able to do that. Now, one of the things that I also started to realize is when you're going through that point, there's other elements too. It's like roles, and I don't actually create a roles folder, but let's say I have the person Lou Friedland, and I've got another person called Tom Norris, and I've got another person called Tom Diaz, and not to leave Chuck out. We've got Chuck Wade and Phil Duerman. Okay. Right. And what you can kind of see too is when you're just evolving a Tinderbox project from scratch, you can see if you've got kind of some mental construct in your head, you can actually pull together enough structure to keep it organized, but not so much that you're overly incrementally formalizing too quickly. And so here I've got all these people, and then I'm like, okay, wait a minute, let's go ahead and start playing the prototype game really immediately. So I've got my person prototype that I just manually added. So we're just going to start with people, and I've got person. Okay, so now I've got my people and I've got my person. And then while we're at it, because there is no built-in entity folder, we'll just go P entity. And we'll say, P entity. I always give the entity the little company one. And so we'll call this one. Yeah. And I use prefixes. So entity, Acme 1. We'll go in here and we'll call this one Acme 2, Acme 2, Acme 3, right? So we've got some entities. Come on. Okay. So if you then think about it, all right, so I've got the core atomic ideas of a person and an entity. And then we're going to want to relate those people, those together. But then there's one other idea that I'm going to pull up for you right now, and I call it role. And I don't remember the icon I used for role. I guess it doesn't really matter. What would be a good icon for a role? I don't want to waste time on this right now, but I don't want to use the poop emoji. That would be bad.
You might want to, depending on the entity.
Depending on the entity role. All right. Well, let's actually okay. So let's just leave it blank for now. But but I like icons just because it helps us see the differentiation. Okay, I'm just going to use a checkbox for now. It's probably the wrong one, but so here's the concept that I came up with on this one. So I've got this role, and I always use prefixes. So role, and this role is and actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy role from one of my other files because.
Wait,
just a minute. Let me.
roles is that
Go ahead. Keep going.
role should be a category, right?
Not necessarily. Let me show you what I mean by role in a minute. I got to find where. Okay, I do have a P
While
role.
you're doing that, I just dropped an overview of the major social network analytical software in the social sciences as a PDF for anybody who's interested. It's a big pain in the ass, but it's free and it's the best.
Okay.
So just to anybody cares.
Awesome. Okay, so here's what I call P role, and let's see if I've got the okay. And I already have an action code running on this. So is prototype is not if so the action code I'm running on this one is if is prototype is not equal true, the name equals role, and then I gotta have what contact. I think I changed this one. Yeah, I think I'll have to modify that.
And
later.
Michael, just a quick question. Just I can't help myself. What is the exclamation mark after prototype mean?
Oh yeah. So when you're doing this is I don't know what you call it, Chuck programming language. What is it? So the exclamation point means not. So if prototype does not equal true.
Okay. Does that mean
then do this thing, right? Because what I don't want this function I don't want this function or this action code renaming the prototype. Because now what you've seen here is I've got role, and now watch what happens. I'm going to say, and again, I've got action code that automates this, but for now I'm gonna, because we're pulling this together manually. I'm going to say the person related to this role is Lou Friedman. What's the name of your school again, Lou?
University of Wisconsin, Madison.
Oh, what is it? I'm sorry.
UW Madison.
Again, you're breaking up on me. What, Madison?
University of Wisconsin, Madison.
University Wisconsin.
That's good enough for government work because I am a government employee.
Yeah. Okay. So and so let's go ahead now and we'll do. We've got an entity now we've just created. Now watch one of the things I'm going to do. I'm also going to put my company in here too. When I do this, I like to create myself somewhat of a drop-down box. So I say entity.
What did you just do?
I did Command 1 and I opened this up.
Oh, that was a keystroke. Okay, sorry, never mind.
And I say entity equals collection, children. And for the sake of, we're going to say short title, because you all know I use the short title function. That too, and you'll see when I'm pulling together a file rapidly like this, you notice I'll just start realizing, okay, I don't have my entity, so I'm going to hit enter. I don't have my entity attribute created in this file yet, so I'll just go ahead and create one real quick, and that's now a set. So I've now created that. So now if I go back to my action, my run, you see I didn't save, I didn't hit enter, so it didn't save. Entity equals collection. Children. And short title. And I don't have short title in here yet either. Oh, I do actually. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my short title generation function from my library, and I'm going to add my line. And this is the beauty of like, once you've got your code up and running, you know, creating a new Tinderbox file from an old Tinderbox file gets really easy, because now you can like paste in your library functions, and I can go back over here and I can go to entity. Just to make sure we are recording, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
you had the
Yeah,
recording
yeah,
message.
yeah. Okay, okay. And then so now I've got my short titles being generated by adding this in my short title generation code, which we can review later. But the reason why I do this is the way, if you remember in the parlance of Tinderbox, every attribute is associated with every note. Okay. And it's not collect. I'm sorry. I've been typing too fast, so I got my typos wrong. So I want to go entity is here. That's good, because I want it as an edict, and I go back to this folder, and it's not collection, it's collect. Okay. So now what, based on the fact that I've done that, when I go here, and I've now got to reset because I did some typos, I'm going too fast. I'm going to reset the inheritance of this back to the default of this note. And okay. Now let me reset that. So it's not collection, it's collect. There we go. So by doing this, what that allows me to do is it allows me to automatically collect all the names. So when I have these main resource folders, I have the primary prototype attribute of that atomic asset collect all of its children. So that way, when I'm going and I'm looking at a function like this, I can say maybe Lou doesn't for the Madison he works for, and that will update itself pretty quick. Just a minute. Oh, you know what? I typed this one person organ. Okay, this is where we get a little. Where's role? I'm just using organization, not entity. This is the different kind of file stuff that you need to play with. So it's person entity, and then we change this from entity. There we go. So now if I go back to this role, you can say Lou is related to which entity? Acme 3 Identity Praxis, University of Wisconsin. By using this collect function, you're having Tinderbox automatically populate all of the, rather than, the other way some people might do this is they would go to their user and they'd set their defaults, what I want the defaults for this attribute to be. I don't like doing that. The reason being is I want to create notes about these concepts like the entities. So that way I can actually put a description or a bio about that company and all the details. So rather than just using the default value for an attribute in the core function, I create my own defaults by having Tinderbox, collect all of the names of my entities or of my people or regulations or terms. And so that's how I go about getting my default. So when I go up here now, I can say, you've got this person named Lou, who is from the University of Wisconsin. And if I go to role, I just got to see what's going wrong with that. Lou, sure, it's not contact, it's person. And the reason why I use person is the default attribute. So now you see I've got this role. So I've got a person named Lou Friedland, and his role is, and I didn't give you a title. You're a professor. Right. So now I can see I've got Lou Friedman, who's a professor at the University of Wisconsin. That's a role. Well, let's say you've got another role. What's another role you might have in your life?
Head of Win Wisconsin.
What is it? Win Wisconsin?
Win Wisconsin, yeah.
Okay, so we'll create a new entity. We'll say Win Wisconsin for Becca, just for fun. And now because I type Win Wisconsin there and I give it a entity prototype, and you can use on ads to automatically do this, I can now quickly go up here. You'll see Tinderbox will, as soon as the Tinderbox updates its, as soon as the edicts run, you'll see that Win Wisconsin has now been added. So now I can go up here and we'll see I can now select Win Wisconsin. And what's your role with them?
Head, founder.
Okay. Founder. Okay. And again, I typically, if I'll use on ads to have this automatically populate some of this. So now I can say, I've got this guy named Lou, who is the, and it will update in a minute, who is the founder of, oh, and you know what? I didn't fix this here. This is going to be entity. Okay. So now I've got this, and make sure that this rule is from this. Okay. I don't think I properly fixed role. Come on. P roll. Yeah. Entity. Okay, there we go. So that will work. This one's needing to have its stuff reset. Why is that not saving? Just a minute. Sometimes if it did, okay. Oops. And we'll go to here. And for some reason, yeah, I know it says organization, but it should be inheriting, but I'm going to just force the fix right now. I can fix why it's not inheriting later. Okay. All right. So now I see I've got Lou Freeman, and Lou Freeman has multiple roles. Right. And then what we could do, and this is where the on ad functionality becomes really, really interesting. So now I'm going to grab one of my other functions that I create that does automatic note linking. And so what we can do now is we could then add in some functionality that says, if we look at the rule, look at the entity from the entities folder. So we're going to automatically create entities. No, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to say on the role, I want to say, in this case, I'm going to say, what do I want to do? I want to say, okay, I don't want to save some time for another way, but I can demonstrate. I've got the other code later. I've just got to think it through real quick. We can have Tinderbox automatically say, if you're related to this company, link, and we'll just manually do it now because we can just demonstrate it. So Tinderbox, I can give you the action code that will say, let's link this role, and we'll give it the prototype entity. So what we can do is now that and again, I've got action code to do it. I just haven't prepared the Julia Child's cooking show for it in this case. You'll see as we now say Lou Friedman, the role Lou Friedman is linked to this company. And the role Lou Friedman is linked to the University of Wisconsin. So now you can start, and this is how you're going to start getting, oh, sorry, I had it twice. Let me do it again. So Lou Freeman is linked to here as entity. Actually, you know what? I want Lou Freeman here linked as role because this is your role to this entity. So Lou Freeman is linked to that one. And Lou Freeman is also linked to this one. Okay. So now we can see, and I'm going to remove these because I've been defining them as roles. I got it. And I know why. Okay. The reason why it's auto creating is I actually have, I do have some action code running automatically in the background. So you'll see here now. So this role, Lou Freeman, is linked to the University of Wisconsin and linked to Wisconsin entity. And the reason why this entity one has done that is because of this. So if I do that, it automatically will change that to role. Right. So now we can start getting, so now you're starting to build out with Tinderbox through automatic linking functionality, the role associations between these companies. And then to your point later, your question earlier, Lou, is we then can apply a template that says, let me look, let's go create a template of the person with all of their associated roles and then export that out. And so long story short, if we take a step back, this is how I do it. You've got a resources folder with people. Here are the people. These people are related to roles. These roles of these people are related to organizations. Because invariably, human beings are individuals who play multiple roles. And so the role of Lou Freeman as professor works with University of Wisconsin. The role of Lou Freeman as founder works with this one. And that's where I made the mistake. That's where I made a mistake, right? So your role founder works with this one. So as you're a founder of this one, you're a founder of that one, but you as Lou, you have these multiple roles. And then what I would do just to signify that up a little bit, I'd create another attribute with it. It's going to be a set called role, which I already have. And then on the people prototype, I would say collect role equals collect children. And we'll say name. Okay. So in doing that, you now see, I can see all of the different roles that Lou has. Okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And then I can push a report out on that. Give me the person Lou and give me all Lou.
Can I ask you, this is great. In fact, this is literally perfect in terms of what I wanted to know. So my one question is, and since our time is, I know we're a hard stop. Like, let's say, Lou is related to Tom. They work together on a project.
Oh yeah, so same I. So okay, well now you're raising a whole other idea. So now you've got the idea of project folder, right? And so now I've got a project folder, and now I've got a project, and this will lead us into the next thing I was about to show you. So I've got a project, and we'll call this one, changing the world project.
Takes longer than you think.
Because a project is yet another atomic idea, right? It's going to be unique to itself and everything else. And this is why I call it person. So you already have by default a people attribute in Tinderbox.
Yeah.
But that's a system level attribute, and it's only a string. So that's why I've created this a user generated attribute I call person, because then that way I can create it as a set, right? Gotcha. And so then I can say, all right, Lou, and again, when you're doing linking in Tinderbox, linking is directional. So for me, my mind, people go into projects. So Lou is related to project, and I'll go ahead and add this person. So Lou is related to project person, and Tom, I'll spell Tom's name, right? Tom is also related to that project. And so you've now got Tom related to this project, and you've got Lou related to this project. And if I look at the project, you see the two people coming in. Now here's where the action code comes into play. I'll say project equals links dot inbound person name. Okay, now watch this. This is wickedly cool. And then I go here and I got to create the attribute project because we haven't done it yet. And the attribute project is a set. Okay. And then we go to our project and we add the project. Oh, yeah. And we add person. And I did it wrong. Sorry. I wanted to go here. And it's not links.project. And I did it up on this one. Darn it. And I'm going to reset that in a minute. Let me go ahead and reset the rule. See the default. Okay. And what I'm going to do down here on the project, I'm going to say your rule is not person. Person links.inbound person name. So what this is saying is populate the set person equal to all of the inbound links whose type is person and pull the name. That's what that action code's saying. So now if I go look at person project and we go, and I'm going to assign the project prototype here. Let's make sure the rule is coming from the project prototype. Did I not hit enter? I don't think I hit enter. I did not hit enter. Okay. The person equals links. You got to remember to hit enter. And if you don't, you got to type it again. Happens to me all the time. Okay. So now I've hit it twice. Now it's done. So person equals links.inbound person name. So what that's saying is, hey, Tinderbox, go interrogate your links. Find all the people ones, and you'll see automatically, because these names were linked, the person prototype has now been automatically populated. So now I can do another project. Project continue with world better project. All right, and we'll give it a name. And now we're going to link these two guys to this project. And you'll notice over here off to the side, I've got the little thing here. And so then I go like that, and Chuck and Phil are going to work on that project. And because I did that, it automatically populates person with Chuck and Phil. And so then later I'll be able to run a report or whatever I want based on the attributes that are associated with that. And then I've got some other code that will automatically link and unlink these notes and automatically clean out the chaff as you swap out people and change them.
Yeah, I think I have some other questions about the nature of the links and the analysis, but I'll save them for another time because they would get us further into the weeds. This is great. I have one quick question though, which is probably of more practical use. If I'm taking notes, and I don't know if a note is a separate prototype. It probably is. Like I'm talking to Todd and I'm interviewing him about, what does your organization do and who else do you work with?
Okay. So that actually leads us to the whole point of today, of what I intended to talk about today. But it does relate. So let me go ahead here and I'll go to Tinderbox lessons. I'm going to open up the file. Okay. So with that one, here is and I'll share this all with you when I'm done. Here's the file I did with one of our Tinderbox colleagues. So on this one, what it's saying is you've got meetings, right, and you've got tasks associated with that meeting. So what I did is I created a bunch of different prototypes, and you watched me create these before, and they've got all different names and they've got different types. And one thing I do is within my folder prototype, I always say like prototype, and the piping is really important. So prototype pipe equals P meeting. The reason why that's important is the on add will change the name of the prototype. If you don't have the piping on that, what this says is when you're adding an item to this folder, make its prototype P meeting, and if the prototype is empty, if it's not empty, if it already has its own prototype, don't reassign a new prototype to it. So that way, if I accidentally copy person into that, person doesn't get changed. But watch this. If I undo this and I move the Michael Becker back out, and now because I've done that, Michael Becker becomes a project, which I don't want, right? So if you add the pipe, this is something that took me like 2 years to find out. If you add that pipe to that, what that does is it says, don't change Michael Becker's prototype because he already has one. So we'll go ahead and reset that. Okay. So then what I'm doing with meetings then is I say, if the name is untitled, then make the name, add the prefix meeting in front of the name. So that helps me manage my prefixes. So now I can just go ahead here. We'll add a child. We've got a new meeting. and we'll say this is Patreon session. Okay, and so then I can just start taking my notes about the meeting. Right, and here I've got the different start dates, end dates, time bands, or who attended the meeting, and again, I don't have all of this linked up right now. Actually, maybe I do. Yeah, here, Michael Becker and Nathan, right? So, and then I can go ahead and add a new one. We'll add Chuck Wade because I can spell his name quickly. Right, and so then Chuck, because I did that, as soon as it updates the edict, sometimes it takes a little bit. You'll see that. Okay, as soon as it updates I don't know if I have let me see. Select children name. Yeah, I already have it. I just maybe have to write it down. Right. So if I go here, and now we can say, oh, I know why. I know why. The reason being, in this demo folder, what I didn't do is it's not just person. I want to populate attendee with that as well. So I not only want the person attribute populated with people's names, I also want the attendee attribute populated with people's names. So now when I go to this, I can see that Chuck Wade is also an attendee. Right. So now I'm adding Chuck to that meeting. So once you've done that, you can quickly kind of assign people to meetings and not meetings. You've got the notes. You'll see that their names have automatically been linked to the meetings. You now can take your notes about that meeting. And then I've got this particular file set up so that when I add a child to the file, here's the tasks. Add Chuck to do X. So you can actually start collecting the whoops. Oh, this is a bug, by the way. It's not a bug, but this issue. You see how it, in the Tinderbox 9.5, if you put an @ Tinderbox assumes an @ means a place. When I'm trying to say @ is, I want the person Chuck to do this thing. So we're asking Mark Anderson to fix that right now, but let's say for now, we'll just say @ Chuck to do.
Presumably you meant Mark Bernstein to fix.
Mark Bernstein, yeah. Mark, there's another one. There's another issue that I flagged with that too. While we're on topic, and we've got 11 minutes left. The other issue that has been identified is if you put a pound and then say that automatically, the pound automatically creates a prototype. And so the problem though is, let's say I wanted to do a note and I want to pound. I'll do a new note here. I wanted to call this note activity pound 1. You can't do it because Tinderbox is going to create a note called a prototype called 1. So we're asking. So in the backstage, we're asking Mark Bernstein to rethink or reconsider how the pound and @ are used in note names, because that creates an obvious conflict with things like task management and activity management. But for the sake of this demo, you see
Twitter hashtags if you want an argument with to get Mark to persuade Mark. If I'm taking
there's no argument. He totally gets it, and he's like, didn't really think about those edge cases. Should have thought about that. My bad. So he's totally on board. And he's
Michael,
thinking I have through how to do it.
A very on point at this point. So go back to the meeting notes for this meeting Patreon session. So in that, we mentioned it doesn't matter, Tom, Tom Diaz. Is it Tom? I'm sorry if I'm wrong. But we mentioned we mentioned someone else. Just write Tom Diaz in there.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create the I'm going to first create the person Tom Diaz.
Well, no, but that's sort of my point. That's sort of my point. Go just maybe just write no, not even there. You're taking meeting notes, Tom.
Yeah.
Just
I would just
Tom
do like.
Diaz.
Yeah.
So if I take notes quickly, a name is mentioned. if I just
Oh yeah, actually,
flag,
this is an interesting one. Why don't we do this? We could do this. Oh, let's try this. Hang on just a minute. Let me think. Okay,
you see what
we're
I'm saying, right?
yeah, I
So
see where you're going.
instead
So
of
let's
like,
do this. Watch this. Watch this. We're gonna go natural language attendee, and we're gonna say uh, we'll do this one.
Michael, you need to create a set called NL attendee.
I know. I do. I'm just trying to do this right now. So let's say it was if you see a 10 colon. If you ever see a 10, then you're going to say, oh, that's not going to work. You're going to want to create some action code around that. Okay, the other way to do that would be this. Taggers is not going to work in that example. So then what you'd want to do is, let's say you had a preface like that. What you'd want to do, and so for the sake of this model, let's say you were creating your notes like this. So those are my attendees for the meeting, correct?
sure.
What you would want.
This is actually, I think it's obvious, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. You know, just Tom is not an attendee at the meeting. He's actually an organization head. He has a role. Or he's a different person with a different role. He's not there, but we're
Okay.
saying, hey, you should go talk to, Tom.
Oh well then I would do this. I'd say task at Lou, go talk to at Tom Diaz at Acme 2.
What are those
Right.
acts? They don't do anything, right?
Well, I mean, whatever convention you want to create up. So at Lou might be the action item, and Tom Diaz might be person, and entity could be right. Do something like that. So you want to come up with whatever nomenclature that works for you, because if you come up with a pattern, Tinderbox action code then could go parse this pattern, and then populate your tasks.
That's my question. So then if I have a set of naming prefix conventions like that, it can just run on my notes and say, oh, create a new person named Tom Diaz, who's an entity, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Well, and more
awesome.
importantly, what it would do is populate in this task who you need to go talk to, what you need to go talk to. If Tinderbox sees ent acme 2, it will create a note called ent acme 2 in the entities folder. It will create a person folder. And again, depending on how we want to associate the action code, it will associate Tom Diaz with ent acme 2. And the beautiful thing about Tinderbox, when you're using the create function of notes, if the note already exists, Tinderbox won't recreate it.
Gotcha.
Right now, if you have a typo,
if I mistakenly think, gotcha,
if you didn't call it, if you called it acme which I would often do because I can't spell, it would create acme 2, and then you just have to go delete it and clean up that shaft manually.
Sure.
Okay, but that's how you would go about taking meeting notes. And so the nice thing about this is you take your notes, and then I've got other code that I've written that would actually, when you go parse. When you run your parsing code, or I've got a stamp that I've run where you'd apply a stamp and you'd say parse notes. I've got a whole other project I've worked on that would actually interrogate all of the notes in your meeting and dynamically create all of the task notes.
Yeah,
so basically
cool.
you could essentially explode the notes, have it go through the text of the notes and produce all of the tasks that you've assigned yourself, and then would automatically look for the at Lou's and make the owner of that task Lou.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk through how that works. Not now, I realize, because you got to go in 4 minutes. But that's great in principle. So you can just take notes on the fly and then basically have just run
a stamp and have Tinderbox parse out all your tasks.
Super. And all your everything, right? Anything that has a naming convention.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So in the same concept, and it's interesting that I was going to talk through. You'll see that same structure, people, topics, entities, I can have Tinderbox automatically creating meeting topics. So let's say in this meeting topic up here, I go in and call it Patreon session is a topic. You see, look, Tinderbox automatically created the topic Patreon session.
Yeah. Wait, what? Yeah, that's
Like,
cool.
I'll do another one. I'll say another topic that we talk about here is note taking.
I see.
Tinderbox
Gotcha.
automatically created a note called note taking for me. Yeah, Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to riff on this a little bit. One of the things that I've long had a headache with taking notes, because I've been involved in taking a lot of notes in meetings, is when you're taking notes, you just got to keep going with the flow of the conversation or presentations coming from other people, things like that. And you wind up with this frustrating aspect that there are nonlinear elements, such as you just found out a reference to another document or a reference to a company or some application was mentioned. You want to capture those things, but you know, oh, that belongs. Oh, in the attendees, a new attendee comes into the meeting, for instance. Oh, I got to go up to where I put the attendees, and you go back to where you're taking the notes, and that can be a very frustrating exercise. And one of the things that Tinderbox can be very helpful for, along the lines of what you're talking about, is just keep writing these things down. Have the coding so that when a new attendee arrives, you can quickly just code so and so arrived as
Yes.
an attendee, and just keep on going. Everything's now
Yeah.
linear in
So
terms
when
of the
you
time
say
sequencing.
code by that, when you say code by like that, I'm just typing. So I just go attendee Chuck Wade,
Right. Yeah.
Guys,
right,
I
and then keep moving on.
Right.
I don't want to
Exactly.
interrupt.
Now
I've
that
got
what
a
you got
s-
is the advantage that you can come back and you can let Tinderbox reorganize that and stick in all the structure. Even if it gets
Correct.
it wrong, you'll still have something better to work with to clean up your notes.
Correct.
And you know, I just think that would be, you know, I've done that, but I've done it manually. So I've had coding schemes for attendees and for tasks and for calendar entries and a whole bunch of things that I just out of habit have done with note taking. And I've used that, but I've always had to go back through my notes and manually restructure that. And while I haven't had the time to do it with Tinderbox, I just know that's one of the things that Tinderbox would be really good at.
Yeah. So I've got 30 more seconds. Lou, you were saying something?
Yep.
I just have a super hard stop too, and that's right, Chuck,
Okay.
is that's
Well,
exactly
I
what
wanted.
I was thinking.
I did want to show you my latest toy before we move on.
I have to go, but can we
Okay.
get
Let me
these
just
files?
demonstrate this one thing. So you see here where I've got this note called Clockify and all of that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I've created some. There's a command line application called for this solution for this enterprise solution called Clockify, which is a enterprise grade time tracking tool. Okay. So now watch what happens here. Because I've set up the command, I've used the command line. I could say, okay, let's set the meeting to now, and let's say the meeting ends from now plus 2 hours. Right. So that's the meeting, and I've got some code that I've written that will post to the run command, the Clockify. So now if I go ahead and say add this to Clockify, Tinderbox has gone off and duly added that to Clockify. And now if I refresh my screen, there's the meeting that we just added into the enterprise grade software.
Very cool.
Right. So now we can set times and track time and all of that. So you in your Tinderbox can file track time. And then if your company is using Clockify or some similar command line tool,
Gotta
you
run.
just pass
I'm sorry.
that date.
I'll see you guys
Yeah, we gotta
next
go.
time. Michael, talk
Yeah.
soon.
All right. See you guys. All right. So on that
Bye.
note, that's kind of what I want to share today.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We got to go. Talk to you later. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Have a good week.